Stop scrolling. Look at your screen right now. I'm about to show you 4 crystals, not decorative stones. 4 soul essences that Machiavelli observed in Renaissance Italy, where your fundamental nature determined your destiny, and the difference between greatness and destruction was what your soul was actually made of. Each crystal represents a different soul essence, a different core nature, a different fundamental force that drives you at the deepest level. Crystal 1, the diamond of ambition. Crystal 2, the ruby of passion. Crystal 3, the sapphire of intellect. Crystal 4, the obsidian of will. Choose one crystal, right now. Don't pick what sounds most impressive or noble. Your instinct is revealing what your soul is actually made of, not what you think you should be, not what you want to be, what you fundamentally are at your core. Comment your choice. 1, 2, 3, or 4. Do it before I reveal what it means. Because what I'm about to decode will expose whether you understand your true soul essence, or whether you're pretending to be something you're not. I'll also discuss how each essence contradicts the others, and you'll be surprised later in the video which soul type actually achieves greatness, while others destroy themselves fighting their own nature. Before I reveal to you what the crystals mean, let me show you how Machiavelli identified soul essence through crisis. In 1512, Spanish troops marched toward Florence. The Republican government was collapsing. Machiavelli advised resistance. Piero Soderini, the Gonfaloniere, faced a choice that would reveal his soul essence. He wavered, he negotiated, he compromised. He eventually surrendered and fled to exile. Why? Because Soderini didn't understand his own soul essence. He tried to be all things, and by fighting his fundamental nature, he became nothing. Paralyzed by trying to use strategies designed for soul essences he didn't possess. Machiavelli watched this and understood. The first step to power is knowing what your soul is actually made of, not what you wish it was. What it is. Now let me decode what each crystal represents, and which one reveals your true essence versus which ones you're pretending to be. We'll analyze each crystal, each soul essence, each fundamental nature, each fatal weakness. Because understanding all 4 essences means you can identify your true nature and stop wasting energy pretending to be something you're not. Let's begin. Crystal 1, the diamond of ambition. If you chose the diamond of ambition, your soul is made of hunger. Your fundamental nature is drive, conquest, the relentless need to expand, to acquire, to achieve more than you currently possess. This isn't greed. It's your soul's actual essence. Your core is forward motion. When you wake up, you immediately think about what you haven't achieved yet. When you succeed, you feel satisfaction for minutes before focusing on the next target. When you rest, you feel restless because your soul needs expansion like lungs need air. This is the soul essence of conquerors, empire builders, and anyone whose fundamental nature is perpetual dissatisfaction with current state. Machiavelli wrote about ambition essence in Chapter 3 of The Prince, analyzing Roman expansion. The Romans, in the countries which they annexed, observed closely these measures. They sent colonies and maintained friendly relations with the minor powers, without increasing their strength. They kept down the greater, and did not allow any strong foreign powers to gain authority. Translation: ambition souls expand naturally and must structure that expansion to avoid self-destruction. Francesco Sforza exemplified the diamond of ambition at its purest. Sforza was born with nothing, no title, no inheritance, no position, but his soul was pure ambition. From his first military command at age 23, every action served expansion, Every battle was a step toward more territory. Every alliance was calculated to enable future conquest. He didn't fight for passion. He was famously emotionless in battle. He didn't fight for principle. He switched sides repeatedly based on opportunity. He didn't fight from stubborn will. He retreated tactically whenever expansion required it. He fought because his soul needed conquest, like bodies need food. Ambition was what he was made of. By 1450, Sforza had conquered Milan through pure, relentless expansion. He became duke. He ruled for 16 years. He died controlling one of the most powerful states in Italy. Diamond of ambition at its peak. Soul essence aligned with actions. Natural expansion creating natural success. In modern terms, you're the entrepreneur who can't stop building companies. The executive who needs promotion every 2 years or feels dead inside. The person who achieves goals and immediately feels empty until the next target appears. Your soul is made of hunger, and feeding that hunger is your natural state. You maintain meaning through expansion. As long as you're acquiring more, you feel alive and aligned with your nature. Your strength is relentless forward motion. Ambition souls don't get paralyzed by analysis or distracted by emotion. They just expand naturally toward whatever represents more. But here's the fatal flaw Machiavelli identified in the diamond of ambition. Ambition without limits leads to overexpansion and collapse. You conquer territory you can't hold. You achieve positions you can't maintain. You expand until you break. Francesco Sforza understood his ambition essence and controlled it. He expanded until he held Milan, then stopped and consolidated. But his descendants didn't understand their own soul essence. They thought they were ambition souls like Francesco, so they kept expanding, conquering more territory, making more enemies, stretching resources until the Sforza state collapsed. They weren't ambition souls. They were trying to be. And using ambition strategies with non-ambition essence destroyed them. Charles the Ipin of France made the same mistake. His soul was passion essence. He craved glory, adventure, dramatic conquest. But he tried to use ambition strategies, systematic expansion, calculated territory acquisition. He conquered Naples through passionate campaign, then couldn't hold it because his passion soul lost interest in administrative consolidation. Within months, he abandoned everything he'd conquered because maintaining territory bored his passion essence. Ambition strategies with passion soul equals temporary conquest, followed by abandonment. If you are a diamond of ambition soul, your survival depends on recognizing when to stop expanding. Don't conquer endlessly just because your soul craves more. Build structures that consolidate expansion before pursuing next conquest. The most dangerous ambition souls are the ones who satisfy their hunger through calculated expansion that never exceeds their capacity to hold what they take. Machiavelli's advice for ambition essences appears in Chapter 3. The Romans, observing troubles from afar, dealt with them immediately, and not allowing them to develop in order to avoid war. For they knew that war is not to be avoided, but only to be postponed to the advantage of others. Translation: Ambition essence is natural and powerful, but undisciplined ambition destroys you through overexpansion. Expand with structure or collapse from expansion itself. Diamond of ambition with disciplined limits. That's sustainable conquest. If you chose Crystal 1, if you instinctively gravitated toward the symbol that represents hunger, drive, and relentless expansion, then comment below, "My soul is the diamond of ambition." Claim your crystal. Because understanding that your soul is made of hunger means you can channel that hunger through structured expansion. Before undisciplined ambition, leads you to conquer more than you can hold. Crystal 2. The Ruby of Passion. If you chose the Ruby of Passion, your soul is made of intensity. Your fundamental nature is emotion, desire, the overwhelming need to feel deeply, experience fully, and live with maximum sensory and emotional engagement. This isn't a weakness. It's your soul's actual essence. Your core is intensity. When you wake up, you immediately seek experiences that make you feel alive. When you succeed, you need the emotional high of victory more than the practical results. When you rest, you feel bored because your soul needs stimulation, like fire needs oxygen. This is the soul essence of artists, charismatic leaders, and anyone whose fundamental nature is emotional and sensory intensity. Machiavelli wrote about passion essence in chapter 25 of The Prince, discussing fortune and passion. I hold it to be true that fortune is the arbiter of one half of our actions, but that she still leaves us to direct the other half. I compare her to one of those raging rivers which floods plains, destroys trees and buildings, and carries earth from one place to another. Everyone flees before it. All yield to its violence. Translation: Passion souls are forces of nature, intense, overwhelming, undeniable when unleashed. Pope Alexander VI exemplified the ruby of passion at its finest. Alexander didn't conquer for ambition's sake. He didn't calculate coldly. He didn't fight from stubborn principle. He lived for intensity. His court was famous for elaborate theatrical performances, passionate affairs, and sensory excess. He made decisions based on desire and charisma rather than calculated strategy. When threatened, he responded with emotional force, overwhelming enemies through sheer intensity rather than careful planning. When forming alliances, he seduced people through personal magnetism rather than rational negotiation. When facing setbacks, he erupted with rage, then forgave passionately when useful. His soul was pure passion, and he ruled successfully for 23 years by aligning his actions with his emotional essence rather than pretending to be an ambition soul or intellect soul. Ruby of passion at its peak, soul essence aligned with leadership style, natural intensity creating natural influence. In modern terms, you're the leader who inspires through charisma rather than logic. The artist who creates from emotional necessity rather than calculated market strategy. The person who needs to feel intensely or life becomes meaningless. Your soul is made of passion, and emotional intensity is your natural state. You maintain meaning through feeling. As long as you're experiencing deeply, you feel alive and aligned with your nature. Your strength is an overwhelming influence through intensity. Passion souls don't need to convince logically or conquer systematically. They inspire and seduce through pure emotional force. But here's the fatal flaw Machiavelli identified in the ruby of passion. Passion without discipline leads to emotional decisions that destroy what passion built. You commit to relationships you shouldn't. You pursue desires that harm you. You burn so intensely you consume yourself. Pope Alexander VI understood his passion essence and controlled it strategically. He felt intensely, but channeled that intensity toward useful goals rather than letting it control him. But Lucrezia Borgia, Alexander's daughter, didn't control her passion essence. She made emotional decisions that created political disasters. She pursued passions that destroyed alliances. Her intensity consumed her strategically, not because passion was wrong, but because undisciplined passion leads you to feel first and calculate consequences never. Girolamo Savonarola tried to suppress his passion essence entirely. His soul craved intensity, but he channeled it into religious fervor and moral crusading. When that intensity had no outlet, it exploded into fanaticism that got him killed. Passion suppressed doesn't disappear. It erupts destructively when denied. If you are a ruby of passion soul, your survival depends on channeling intensity toward strategic goals. Don't suppress your emotional nature. You'll explode. Don't let it run wild. You'll burn out. Channel passion through structures that amplify its power while preventing destructive excess. The most dangerous passion souls are the ones who feel intensely but direct that intensity strategically, so they inspire and influence without consuming themselves. Machiavelli's advice for passion essences appears in chapter 17. Nevertheless, a prince ought to inspire fear in such a way that, if he does not win love, he avoids hatred, because he can endure very well being feared, whilst he is not hated. Translation: passion essence is natural and powerful, but undisciplined passion creates hatred through emotional excess. Feel intensely, but direct it strategically, or your intensity destroys you. Ruby of passion with strategic channeling. That's sustainable intensity. If you chose Crystal 2, if you instinctively gravitated toward the symbol that represents emotion, desire, and overwhelming intensity, then comment below. My soul is the ruby of passion. Claim your crystal, because understanding that your soul is made of intensity means you can channel that passion strategically, before undisciplined emotion leads you to burn yourself out through excess. Crystal 3. The Sapphire of Intellect. If you chose the Sapphire of Intellect, your soul is made of understanding. Your fundamental nature is analysis, reason. The constant need to comprehend patterns, calculate optimal paths, and understand how systems actually work. This isn't coldness. It's your soul's actual essence. Your core is comprehension. When you wake up, you immediately analyze your situation. When you succeed, you need to understand why it worked more than you need the success itself. When you rest, you can't stop thinking because your soul needs understanding like plants need sunlight. This is the soul essence of strategists, scientists, and anyone whose fundamental nature is rational analysis and systematic understanding. Machiavelli himself exemplified the sapphire of intellect at its finest. Machiavelli didn't conquer territory like an ambition soul. He didn't rule through intensity like a passion soul. He didn't fight from stubborn principle like a will soul. He analyzed. He calculated. He understood. Throughout his career as Florence's diplomatic secretary, Machiavelli observed rulers and analyzed what actually worked versus what should theoretically work. When sent to observe Cesare Borgia in 1502, he didn't just report events. He analyzed Borgia's strategic method and calculated why it was effective. When tortured by the Medici in 1513, he survived by analyzing his interrogators and calculating optimal responses rather than fighting emotionally or stubbornly. When exiled from politics, he didn't despair. He analyzed everything he'd observed and wrote The Prince as systematic understanding of power mechanics. His soul was pure intellect, and everything he achieved came from aligning his actions with his analytical essence, rather than pretending to be something else. Sapphire of intellect at its peak. Soul essence aligned with method. Natural analysis creating natural insight. In modern terms, you're the person who needs to understand how things work more than you need to use them. The strategist who calculates optimal paths before acting. The analyst who finds patterns invisible to others. Your soul is made of comprehension, and understanding is your natural state. You maintain meaning through analysis. As long as you're comprehending systems, you feel alive and aligned with your nature. Your strength is pattern recognition and optimal calculation. Intellect souls don't need to conquer through force or inspire through emotion. They win by understanding the game better than anyone else. But here's the fatal flaw Machiavelli identified in the Sapphire of Intellect. Analysis without action leads to paralysis. You calculate so perfectly that you never execute. You understand so deeply that you can't decide. You see every variable and become frozen by complexity. Machiavelli understood his intellect essence but struggled with execution. He calculated brilliant strategies, but rarely had the power to implement them. He understood political mechanics perfectly, but couldn't translate understanding into personal success, not because his analysis was wrong, but because intellect souls can become so focused on perfect understanding that they forget understanding must eventually become action. Piero Soderini made the opposite mistake. He tried to use intellect strategies despite having a different soul essence. He analyzed when he should have acted decisively. He calculated when he should have fought passionately. He tried to outthink problems his soul wasn't designed to solve intellectually. Intellect strategies with non-intellect soul equals paralysis through mismatched method. Pope Julius II recognized he wasn't an intellect soul and embraced it. His soul was will essence, stubborn determination. So instead of calculating complex strategies, he made simple, determined decisions and forced them through. It worked because his methods matched his essence. If you are a sapphire of intellect soul, your survival depends on translating analysis into action. Don't calculate endlessly. Set deadlines where understanding becomes execution, regardless of whether you've achieved perfect comprehension. The most dangerous intellect souls are the ones who analyze brilliantly but execute decisively. So they combine perfect understanding with imperfect but timely action. Machiavelli's advice for intellect essences appears in Chapter 14. A prince ought to have no other aim or thought, nor select anything else for his study than war and its rules and discipline, for this is the sole art that belongs to him who rules. Translation: Intellect essence is natural and powerful, but analysis without action equals understanding that changes nothing. Comprehend perfectly, but act imperfectly, or your intelligence becomes useless. Sapphire of Intellect with decisive execution. That's useful understanding. If you chose Crystal 3, if you instinctively gravitated toward the symbol that represents analysis, reason, and systematic understanding, then comment below. My soul is the Sapphire of Intellect. Claim your crystal. Because understanding that your soul is made of comprehension means you can force yourself to execute before perfect analysis becomes a paralyzing calculation. So your intelligence creates results instead of just insights. Crystal 4, the Obsidian of Will. If you chose the Obsidian of Will, your soul is made of determination. Your fundamental nature is force, resilience, the absolute refusal to bend, break, or compromise regardless of circumstances or consequences. This isn't stubbornness. It's your soul's actual essence. Your core is unbreakable. When you wake up, you immediately resume whatever you were determined to achieve yesterday. When you fail, you simply try again without emotional processing. When you're told something is impossible, you hear difficult and proceed anyway because your soul knows only forward force. This is the soul essence of endurance champions, unmovable leaders, and anyone whose fundamental nature is determination that transcends reason, emotion, or ambition. Machiavelli wrote about will essence in Chapter 26 of The Prince, the final exhortation. This opportunity, therefore, ought not to be allowed to pass for letting Italy at last see her liberator appear. Nor can one express the love with which he would be received in all those provinces which have suffered so much from these foreign scourings, with what thirst for revenge, with what stubborn faith, with what devotion, with what tears. Translation. Will souls inspire others through sheer determination, stubborn faith that refuses defeat. Pope Julius II exemplified the Obsidian of Will at its purest. Julius didn't conquer through ambitious expansion planning. He didn't rule through passionate charisma. He didn't calculate complex strategies. He simply would not be stopped. When Venice opposed him, Julius formed the League of Cambrai and crushed Venice through sheer determined assault. No complex strategy, just relentless force. When France threatened Italy, Julius immediately switched alliances and expelled France through stubborn refusal to accept French presence. No calculation of odds, just absolute determination. When enemies said he was too old, too sick, too politically isolated, Julius ignored them and forced his will onto reality through pure determination. His soul was pure will, and he achieved more through stubborn refusal to fail than most rulers achieved through ambition, passion, or intellect combined. Obsidian of Will at its peak. Soul essence aligned with method. Natural determination creating unstoppable force. In modern terms, you're the person who simply will not quit regardless of logic, emotion, or circumstances. The leader whose determination inspires loyalty beyond rational calculation. The competitor who wins through refusing to lose rather than through superior strategy. Your soul is made of will, and unbreakable resolve is your natural state. You maintain meaning through persistence. As long as you're refusing to break, you feel alive and aligned with your nature. Your strength is absolute reliability. Will souls don't need to be brilliant or passionate. They simply cannot be stopped, and that consistency becomes their power. But here's the fatal flaw Machiavelli identified in the Obsidian of Will. Determination without adaptation leads you to force paths that should be abandoned. You persist when you should pivot. You endure when you should retreat. You die on hills that aren't worth defending because your soul knows only forward force. Pope Julius II understood his will essence, but sometimes let it control him destructively. He persisted in campaigns that depleted resources. He refused to compromise when compromise would have been strategic. It worked, barely, because his determination overwhelmed most obstacles. But lesser will souls who tried the same approach destroyed themselves through stubborn persistence down wrong paths. Girolamo Savonarola had pure will essence. When tortured, he endured. When threatened, he refused to bend. When offered escape, he chose martyrdom. But his determination was aimed at wrong goals. He persisted in reforming Florence when Florence didn't want reform. He refused to compromise when compromise would have saved his life and his movement. His will was absolute. His will was also his destruction, because determination pointed at impossible goals equals noble failure. Cato the Younger made the same mistake. Pure will soul who refused to compromise with Julius Caesar. He committed suicide rather than live in a Rome he didn't control, because his soul was determination. And when determination had nowhere to force itself, it turned inward destructively. If you are an obsidian of will soul, your survival depends on directing your determination strategically. Don't persist blindly. Choose which goals deserve your unstoppable force. Let your will essence drive you, but let intellect or counsel choose the direction. The most dangerous will souls are the ones who combine absolute determination with strategic goal selection. So they become unstoppable forces moving toward achievable objectives. Machiavelli's advice for will essences appears in chapter 25. Because fortune is a woman, and it is necessary, if you wish to master her, to conquer her by force, and it can be seen that she lets herself be overcome by the bold, rather than by those who proceed coldly. Translation: Will essence is natural and powerful, but determination pointed at wrong goals equals wasted force. Persist absolutely, but choose directions strategically, or your will destroys you. Obsidian of Will with strategic direction. That's unstoppable achievement. If you chose Crystal 4, if you instinctively gravitated toward the symbol that represents force, resilience, and absolute determination, then comment below. My soul is the Obsidian of Will. Claim your crystal. Because understanding that your soul is made of determination means you can direct that will strategically before blind persistence leads you to die on hills that were never worth defending. The soul essence reality. You now know your Machiavellian soul essence. The diamond of ambition, the ruby of passion, the sapphire of intellect, the obsidian of will. But here's what Machiavelli understood that separates those who achieve naturally from those who struggle forever. Your soul essence determines which strategies work for you, and using strategies designed for different essences destroys you no matter how hard you work. An ambition soul using passion strategies burns intensely, but conquers nothing permanent. A passion soul using intellect strategies analyzes when it should feel and loses its natural power. An intellect soul using will strategies forces itself to persist when it should adapt and calculate. A will soul using ambition strategies expands when it should consolidate and exhausts itself through overreach. Wrong strategies for your essence? You work harder and achieve less because you're fighting your fundamental nature. Machiavelli watched every soul type succeed and fail. Diamond of ambition, Francesco Sforza expanded systematically and conquered Milan. Natural alignment between soul and strategy. Charles V expanded impulsively because he had passion soul using ambition strategy, conquered Naples, and lost it within months. Ruby of passion, Pope Alexander VI ruled through charisma for 23 years, natural alignment. Girolamo Savonarola suppressed his passion into fanaticism, destroyed by fighting his nature. Sapphire of Intellect, Machiavelli analyzed political mechanics and created the prince, natural alignment. Piero Soderini tried intellect strategies with non-intellect soul, paralyzed by using wrong method. Obsidian of Will, Pope Julius II forced his will onto Italy and expelled France, natural alignment. Cato the Younger directed determination at impossible goals, destroyed by misdirected essence. Understanding your crystal is step 1. Using strategies designed for your essence is step 2. Achieving naturally rather than struggling artificially is mastery. If your soul is the diamond of ambition, your essence is hunger and expansion. Your strategy should be systematic conquest with consolidation. Your fatal error is expanding beyond capacity to hold what you take. Your path to power. Satisfy hunger through disciplined growth. If your soul is the ruby of passion, your essence is intensity and emotion. Your strategy should be inspiration and influence through feeling. Your fatal error is letting undisciplined passion make destructive decisions. Your path to power. Channel intensity towards strategic goals. If your soul is the sapphire of intellect, your essence is understanding and analysis. Your strategy should be pattern recognition and optimal calculation. Your fatal error is achieving perfect understanding but never executing. Your path to power. Translate analysis into imperfect but timely action. If your soul is the obsidian of will, Your essence is determination and force. Your strategy should be absolute persistence toward chosen goals. Your fatal error is persisting blindly on wrong paths. Your path to power. Direct unstoppable will toward achievable objectives. But here's the secret Machiavelli never wrote explicitly. The greatest rulers recognized their primary essence but developed secondary essences for specific situations. Cesare Borgia was primarily intellect soul, but developed enough ambition essence to expand when calculation indicated expansion was optimal. Pope Julius II was primarily will soul, but developed enough passion essence to inspire loyalty beyond his determination alone. Francesco Sforza was primarily ambition soul, but developed enough intellect essence to know when to stop expanding. Primary essence, secondary development, complete strategic flexibility. That's the difference between those who achieve naturally and those who struggle forever by fighting their fundamental nature. The final challenge. Comment your crystal one more time. My soul is the diamond of ambition. My soul is the ruby of passion. My soul is the sapphire of intellect. My soul is the obsidian of will. Claim your crystal. Because this isn't a personality quiz. This is a soul essence diagnostic. Machiavelli watched rulers throughout Renaissance Italy. He documented which soul essences achieved naturally when aligned with matching strategies, and which souls destroyed themselves fighting their fundamental nature. I'm decoding his essence system to show you what your soul is actually made of, and whether you're using strategies designed for your nature or struggling with methods meant for different essences. Subscribe to this channel, because in the next video, I'm revealing the strategy matching system Machiavelli identified. How ambition souls should expand. How passion souls should inspire. How intellect souls should calculate. How will souls should persist. The complete strategic framework that lets you achieve naturally by aligning method with essence, instead of struggling artificially by using strategies designed for souls fundamentally different from yours. Machiavelli didn't just identify soul essences, he mapped which strategies work for which essences, so you stop fighting your nature and start using it. And in the next video, I'll show you exactly which strategies match your soul. Until then, study your crystal, identify your essence, and remember, in the game of power, success comes from aligning strategy with soul essence, not from fighting what you fundamentally are. It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. But it is best to understand your soul essence and use strategies designed for your nature, because fighting what you are guarantees failure no matter how hard you work. Know your soul, use your nature, achieve naturally. I'll see you in the next revelation.